Representative Pearl joining us over Zoom, and we're going to hear now from Michael Grady on H 603 version draft 2.2.
Yep. You want it on the screen? I also have paper copies.
If you have paper copies, I think that's fine if you want to pass those around.
So this is Mike O'Grady, Office of Legislative Counsel. You have draft number 2.2 of H603. As you will remember, when the bill was introduced, the only change was striking the words "as whole birds" only from the 1,000 bird exception, 5,000 bird exception, and 20,000 bird exception to the requirement that slaughter be inspected. You had discussions about agency proposals and other proposals, and you've decided that the language should remain largely as it was introduced, except prior to the term poultry products in the entire section, that you would add the word raw to respond to concerns that people might look at these exceptions as an opportunity to prepare and sell food without inspection or licensing. So you will see the raw change on several places throughout the amendment. It's page 1, line 11, page 1, line 15, page 2, line 6, page 2, line 8, page 2, line 18, page 3, line 2, page 3, line 5, line 7, line 10, page 4, line 4. Those are the addition of raw before poultry products. The whole birds change from the original bill remains for the 1,000 bird exception on page 1, line 17, and page 3, line 15 for the 20,000 birds, and for page 2, line 8 for 5,000 birds. And then the last change on page 4, line 10, on the required label, the agency had asked that it have the name of the product on the label, and you agreed to make that change. And that is a change that will be applicable to 1,000, 5,000, and 20 when sold from the farm at a farmer's market or to a food restaurant.
Sorry, I was still looking at the raw words. I think, what was the last thing you said there, Mike?
So the last thing was page 4, line 10. This was the language that the agency had asked for the label. They wanted the name of the product on the label, like wings, breasts, etc. And that would apply for both for all three, for the 1,000, 5,000, or 20, when it's sold from the farm at a farmer's market or to a food restaurant.
Representative O'Brien.
Mike, what's the definition of a restaurant? Like, would food carts be considered restaurants, or, you know, like a cafeteria here, or even like a school where potentially parents can come in and pay for a meal?
So the Department of Health has what they call the Food Establishment Licensing Rule. It's basically where food is provided to the public for immediate consumption.
It doesn't have to do too much with a commercial transaction. Like,
No, you can have food establishments that are nonprofits, basically.
Questions? I know we've had plenty of time to talk about what the bill does, and I expect that we're all pretty clear on what the bill does or intends to do. We had, I think, a pretty, I think that the agency was, you raised a good concern about, well, pot pies came up, and that we didn't want anybody to think that they could prepare a pot pie, cook the chicken, and then sell that. So hopefully this addresses that issue without adding some of the other language that we looked at. And I think we're also we also understand that there will be that the agency will put out guidance to farmers, which should make all of this perfectly clear. And hopefully there won't be any ambiguity at all. I know that we are going to lose one of our committee members in about 10 minutes, and it seems to me that maybe we're in a position where we could vote on this bill if there, while we have a full committee, and if there aren't any other questions, or if no one else has anything else that they feel we need to hear. Everybody.
like on the slaughtering part, the farmer essentially, right? How the farmer bring in, say, somebody who's better at slaughtering chickens than the farmer herself or himself? Do these sort of things?
The farmer can hire people to do slaughter for their slaughter establishment, yes. That slaughter establishment has to be licensed. Now for someone working underneath the exemption, I think they can still hire someone, but that person is subject to all the sanitary standards and requirements that the farmer will be subject to. You know, you can have an employee of your farm engaged in the slaughter.
Okay.
Okay. Now, we haven't had a committee vote on a bill this year, so my recollection is that since we made an amendment, that we want to first vote on the amendment and then vote on the bill as amended. And I'll start then by seeing if anybody would like to move that we vote to amend the bill using draft 2.2 that we've just looked at. Representative Wilson?
I'd second the motion.
All right, second, Representative Lipsky. Any other discussion?
I just want to ask Heather, Representative Supernault, if this is to your liking.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, any other discussion? So Representative Graham will act as the clerk, and please call the roll.
Representative Nicole,
Yes.
Rodney Graham, yes. Representative Josie Levitt,
Yes.
Representative Jed,
Yes.
Representative John O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative Henry Pearl, Yes. That's one of your votes, Henry.
Representative Mike Rice,
Yes.
Representative Heather Supranot,
Yes.
Representative Dave Tepelman,
Yes.
Representative Charlie Wilson,
Yes.
Representative Dave Garrett.
Yes. Is that everybody?
Who's gonna be the reporter?
Me.
You?
Thank you.
All right, I think that was 11:00. Is that right?
It could be that way, yeah.
Okay. Then we'll ask whether anybody would like to move that the bill as amended be approved. Representative Wilson moves,
I'll second.
and Representative Levitt second. Thank you. A discussion. Of Representative Levitt seconds.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I think we're ready to call the roll.
Representative Emily Cole,
Yes.
Representative Rodney Graham, Representative Josie Rivett,
Yes.
Representative Jed Lipsky,
Yes.
Senator John O'Brien,
Yes.
Senator Henry Pearl,
Yes.
Representative Mike Rice.
Yes.
Representative Heather Supranot,
Yes.
Representative Dave Templeman,
Yes.
Representative Charlie Wilson,
Yes.
Representative Dave Garrett.
Yes. 11:00. Okay, thank you.
It's historic.
It's historic, but.
Well, I'm not sure we've had any 11:00.
Oh, possibly, yeah. Thank you,
Maybe
Representative
right.
Pearl, for joining us remotely. And we will, since you're not here to make sure this happens, Henry, we'll make sure that we're noting that you voted remotely. You're allowed a total of 3 days of remote votes during the year.
Oh, it's not like you just blew through 2 votes. there.
No, that was, right, good point.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
Mike, thank you for joining us, and the committee, I think we're gonna have a little conversation about the timber trespass bill. I don't know whether you have time to stay or not.
Sure.
Okay,
You need me for that?
if you need to go, yeah, I know you have an appointment, so you probably should go. Yeah.
I did.
Bye. Yeah. Okay, so we don't need a break. I think we just got started. We've had lots of testimony on the timber trespass bill, and I just wanted to check in and see whether anyone was feeling like we should be hearing more testimony on the bill. There's also been discussion, this is 614, H614. There's also been some discussion about having, looking at some additional language. Thoughts, Representative Temple?
I'm concerned that there isn't enough teeth behind this one. After getting the testimony from the state's attorney or the fellow from the state's attorney's office, the response I took from what he was saying was that in fact the enforcement, the seizure, these things still are somewhat not strong enough. Particularly seizure. It seemed that seizure was problematic and perhaps not as effective as we would hope. My walk away from that situation was perhaps just mimicking what they do in Maine and raising the bond amount from 50,000 to 250.
Yeah, is that an existing number, the 50,000?
It is for the land, the home improvement.
Okay, all right. Since we have the bill, it may be a title that we don't typically work with, but we have the bill, so we could make that change. We could propose that change anyway, the committee. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So Bill will also, because of its nature, likely spend some time in the Judiciary Committee, so that they would be reviewing any changes that we make, including that one, which I think would be helpful. So thoughts on that, Representative Levitt?
Not really on that, but I do think I see where you're coming from with that a $50,000 bond doesn't seem, I mean, I looked up how much it costs to get one. It's very inexpensive, actually. I guess my thing is, and I know this is complicated because some people sell their wood out of state, but I really would like to have a trip ticket requirement for mills to accept loads of lumber from within the state, just to keep the, the honest people are probably doing this anyway. So, I mean, Jed just showed us his stack just from this weekend. And I think it will catch sort of the phrase we keep using, the bad actors. It doesn't seem arduous to me. What Jed explained was pretty simple. And I think the mill does seem like the last place to stop the sale of stolen timber. So if we could add that, I'd be curious to see what that would look like.
Yeah.
Other thoughts? So a couple of ideas here, other ideas or reactions to those thoughts. John?
I just have a clarity one. Mike, what does it take to be essentially accused, I guess, by the state's attorney or landowner of criminal timber trespass? Like, is that where it comes in? Because we heard there are these civil cases.
Right, there's both, and it's not unusual for consumer protection statutes like timber trespass to have both a criminal component and a civil action for the harmed party to recover. So what you need to show for timber trespass, which is not in the bill, is that the person knowingly and recklessly removed timber of another without that person's authority. And timber or forest products is defined. It's not just your standing trees. It can be logwood, fuel wood, etc. It can even go down to shrubs in the timber trespass. So you have the state's attorney would need to show knowingly or recklessly remove those without the consent of the owner.
Or in this case, feel they have enough evidence to charge a logger with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not unlike any other crime. You have to have evidence to show that there's probable cause to arrest that person, and then you have to convict that person.
So if somebody steals 10 cords of firewood from a sugar house, is that timber trespass, or is that just like a property theft?
Technically, I believe under the definition of forest product in 13.3602, I think it would be. It could be because I think fuel wood is specifically listed as a forest product. But remember that law enforcement doesn't have to. Law enforcement often has options. They aren't confined to like, oh, we're just going to look at whether or not it's a crime under this law. They might look and see if it's a crime underneath another law. And maybe it's easier to prove the crime under the other law than it is under the first. So they're not limited in saying this is the only way that they can pursue an action. So no person shall knowingly or recklessly cut down, fell, destroy, remove, injure, damage, or carry away any timber or forest product placed or growing for any use or purpose whatsoever. And then that's what timber trespass is. And then a forest product. Logs, pulpwood, veneer, boltwood, wood chips, nutwood, poles, pilings, biomass, fuel wood, or bark. So firewood stacked at your sugar house is fuel wood. Somebody carrying it away without the consent, that would be actionable potentially.
So is there in private property theft, if someone steals my car, do I also have a potential civil action I could take against that person besides potentially a criminal arrest?
Not one that I specifically know of in statute. But say for example, someone calls you up and defrauds you over the telephone, that's a crime, and you also have a civil action for that. Because that's under the consumer protections chapter.
And those sort of treble damages come in.
That's where treble damages is.
Representative Levitt, you mentioned that you had looked up what it costs.
I
And
just had it. It's not, I mean, maybe part of the reason folks don't want to do trip tickets is your ability to get a surety bond is linked to your credit rating. And hang on, let's see. Hang on. The most it was, here we go. Bear with me.
yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to.
It's $25 per thousand, roughly.
Okay. That seems like it's the right ballpark anyway, and we should probably, I think we have reached out to try and get somebody during business to come in and testify. But absent that, I think we understand that we're not asking, the bill wouldn't require that anybody come up with $50,000. It's sort of like an insurance premium. That's
Exactly. Yeah.
And, but is that the right amount? And perhaps nobody's been thinking over the years, maybe it's been 50,000 in the home improvement situation for decades. I have no idea.
Not for
Not
decades.
decades, okay.
I think that law has only been in place for about 10 years.
Okay.
For $100,000 bond, it's between 1,000 and 3,000, depending, and that's if you have excellent credit. And then it goes as high as 10,000 for 100,000 if you have bad credit below 600. But don't forget though, we're only gonna get asked for a surety bond if it's their second infraction.
Mhm.
So it's not like we're hitting everyone with this brand new cost. It's
Right.
only folks who have been found guilty of one infraction and they haven't sort of remedied it and then they've done it again. So we're not adding a cost to any of the good actors.
Right.
Which I think is very important to remember.
I think possibly though, the question is whether it's enough of a cost to deter the bad actor, the legitimately bad actor from.
I mean, if you sort of just do basic math, if it's 100,000 and at maximum it's 10,000 and then. Basic math is not my strong.
It would be
suit.
25,000 if at that 10% mark.
Okay.
At the $250,000.
And that's if you have really bad credit. Otherwise, it would be like 6,000.
So,
Seems fine.
let's see, does anybody else have a thought on this question? We do have we already have testimony on Thursday that might be able to shed some light on this question, or at least give us another opportunity to ask somebody who's been thinking about this problem for a long time. So maybe we can hear what that witness had to say, and then we can sort of do we feel that we know enough to suggest another number? I think that's maybe what the question is, and what would that number be?
Trying to see when the 50 was added.
Okay. All right, so, how does the committee feel about asking for more testimony on what trip tickets are, how they work? Whether we might want to pursue that as part of the bill or it's been suggested, propose another group to study that question. What are the thoughts on that? Or just not pursue that at all? Is it worth having more discussion about that?
It's too bad Jed's,
Yeah, fine. Representative,
oh, I was just saying it's too bad Jed's not here. But, yes,
yeah, I think that I think he would say yes, he thinks it's worth having that conversation.
I would say yes too.
He said so, yeah.
So that would be on a loaded logs. What about loaded chipboard or loaded firewood?
Yeah, I don't know. So that's what we would need to find out.
Mhm.
It works. Representative Rice.
Yeah, just, I mean, there was mention at some point, I don't remember whose testimony it was at this point, that there's even the sort of instance of people doing this and then just milling it themselves, sort of avoiding avoiding any interaction that would require tickets anyway. But I mean, I do think that it's a lot of questions that are coming up, so I think that probably warrants more, at least more conversation, and that maybe at least it could be sort of end up in a study to see if there's a system that would make sense.
Yeah. So as we've heard, this is not a new problem, and it's not the first time that the legislature has tried to address the problem. And I think that it would be unfortunate if we did all this work, patted ourselves on the back, and then ended up 10 years from now with nothing actually changing on the ground. And we know that there are obstacles. There's the backup in the courts. And there's it's not going to go away anytime soon, sadly, even with new judges. There's the practical matter of seizure, which seems like that's going to be hard to overcome. I did wonder, and again, this would be something that another committee would definitely want to weigh in on, but the percentage of the forfeiture amount that goes to the law enforcement that doesn't amount to very much. We heard that testimony. Could we add an incentive there to make it more worth people's while to pursue it?
I think one of the issues that I think Jed and Chris Delia brought up were that we're assuming a much higher value of what might be seized than what is likely to be seized.
Mhm.
So it could, we're thinking multi-$100,000 pieces of equipment when in fact it might be more like 50 to 100,000. And how much of a mortgage or lien do you have on that? And then what's left?
Yeah.
So that might be something we should look at a little. I don't know how we even look at that, but.
Representative Rice?
Yeah, I just think that what I was hearing was that seizure is not sort of the piece that folks are most sort of excited about or think is going to be the game-changing piece. It's like we're putting seizure in so that if it were to sort of make sense to use it, they would have the ability to use it, but that there are also these other, it sounded like the registration piece was actually the one that people thought was, like the fact that if folks are convicted of this more than once, that their name is going to be on a list and that list can be shared.
Yeah.
And that was going to be maybe the most effective deterrent. So that I don't know. I feel like to give the seizure, to give the ability to exercise seizure, that's great. I think we've heard anecdotally like it would only have to happen once and then it would never have to happen again. And maybe law enforcement will sort of reach the point where they decide that they are gonna, there's one situation that makes sense and more they sort of deploy that. But I think there are sort of other pieces that also and I sort of work in tandem with the education and outreach piece that we've all been talking about too. to more effectively to, just focusing on seizure.
Right, and I know that it came up the other day that education and outreach to prevent this from happening in the first place. I don't think there's anything in the bill that addresses that. So that's another possibility. If there's an obvious thing that we can do, we haven't really taken testimony on that, but. Representative Pearl, were you trying to, or
He just got kicked off and came back on.
Oh, okay.
accidentally.
John?
I mean, I think one other thing I heard from Christelia was that because of this, 26,000 pending cases, it sounds like state's attorneys have almost no time to do any investigations, and these all require investigations because they're murky oftentimes. And so anything that could potentially provide transparency or paper trail would help enormously. If there's, industry tolerance or that sort of thing.
Yeah,
But that might go to a study though. And like you were saying that, if people knew that you can always call up your county forester to come out and look and say like, yeah, this is nice wood, you should be getting no money for this.
Right.
That would be a great element to add in there and do a educational campaign. I don't think most old Vermonters know that's a service that's out there.
right,
And also just like, hey, did somebody knock on your door and offer to take some wood? Go check this list to see if it's one of
Right,
those
if they all had the list,
Yeah.
that would be helpful. They'd be like, it's a list.
I was saying to somebody that from time to time, our local newspaper, daily newspaper, prints press releases that the AG's office sends out. They're warning about scams. To be on the lookout for. That somebody could do that kind of thing. Yeah. All right. Anything else while we have Mike that he might be able to help with, or Mike?
I haven't been able to confirm, but the 50,000 was added in 2007 or 2005. I can't open the archival acts to confirm that, but it's one of those times.
Okay. So 2007, okay, so 15 years anyway, a little more, okay. So perhaps that number is due to be updated just because of inflation. Okay, good. Thank you, Mike. I don't think we need to continue hashing this out this afternoon unless there's something else that anybody's thinking. We'll see if we can line up some other testimony for this week and then figure out what our next step is. But I'm hoping that we'll be able to move this bill along either by the end of the week or certainly again.
Which number is this?
This is 614. Yeah. Is it up there?
Yeah.
It's at the top. Okay, anybody have anything else? We're on for tomorrow morning at 9:30. And just a heads up that we've got for Thursday, 9 o'clock. And that was something that we're gonna see how 9 o'clock goes. So there's a lot we have on the wall, and I think there are bills that even are not on our wall that we might like to have on our wall. And in order to get to some or all of them, we may want to try and just use as much of the time available to us as we have.
I'm supportive of that.
Okay, good.
Good.
All right, that may mean staying here until 7 some evenings. Probably not 7. Maybe 3:30 or 4, more often. Okay, great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
You. That's kind